Good afternoon. I'm Susana Rivera-Mills, and I have the pleasure of serving as Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at Ball State University. Inclusive excellence is an enduring value at our university, a value that guides our ability to fulfill our vital mission. In our strategic plan, we define inclusive excellence as a commitment to respect and embrace equity, inclusion, and diversity in people, ideas, and opinions. Throughout our history, we've embraced this enduring value by nurturing a diverse and inclusive learning, living, and working environment for all members of our campus community. In our first Inclusive Excellence Roundtable, Jeff Mearns, our university president, led a discussion with a few of our alumni leaders, as well as our Associate Vice President for Inclusive Excellence. Today, I've asked a few of our leaders amongst our faculty and staff to join me for a second in a four-part roundtable series to discuss our past, present, and future in terms of this important work. With me today, I have Amanda Drosti. She is an Upper Division Advising Center Coordinator and primarily works with a team of advisors focused within the College of Fine Arts and College of Communication, Information, and Media. Amanda enjoys working with students and their families to promote their personal, professional, and academic successes, and is particularly passionate about supporting the development of women in leadership positions. I also have Dr. Serena Salome, who is an associate professor in educational leadership. She brings with her experiences as an elementary teacher in Texas, California, and Illinois prior to completing her doctoral work and then coming to Ball State. A past winner of the Rawlings Distance Education Award, her research focuses on social capital, urban schools, and language arts and student achievement. Dr. Janelle Fowler joins us. She is an associate professor of social work. She is currently engaged in research that is exploring implicit bias and general levels of acceptance of diversity within our social work department. Additionally, she is part of a research team that is developing a comprehensive quantitative and qualitative approach to exploring implicit bias and acceptance of diversity within the department. And last but not least, we have Dr. Paige Turner, who is the Dean of the College of Communication, Information, and Media. Along with extensive research and service to the Organization for the Study of Language and Gender, Dean Turner helped lead the discussion and revision of our policy on freedom of speech on campus and has been active in developing our intergroup dialogues program. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. So I'd like to begin with you, Dean Turner. You've been all around the Midwest, earning your master's and doctorate degrees at Purdue, and then working your way up at St. Louis University and Webster University in Missouri. What was your main deciding factor to come here to Ball State in April of 2018?
So I wanted to find a place that had the values that I had. And I was interviewing, and during an interview, you always want to impress everyone with what you want to have happen. And I would say, we should have immersive learning. And people would say, we've had that for decades. I said, we should care about inclusion. And they said, we have been doing that work and made it part of our strategic plan. It seemed like every time I said we should, Ball State University said we are. And I knew that this was a place that matched my values. And I came to realize that I wanted to be part of a place that was doing the things I already valued. And I also wanted to make sure people knew that we were doing these things. We are Hoosier humble. And I think Ball State University needs to be Hoosier proud. And I wanted to be part of that.
That is wonderful to hear, and I think you're so right. We have so much to be proud of, for sure. Amanda, let me continue with you. You've had several stops in your career, but you seem to have found a home at Ball State. How did you get here, and how did you discover your passion for academic advising?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for allowing us all to be here today. It's really an honor to share this time with you and our other esteemed faculty members. I have long been a trailing spouse, as my spouse is in the School of Music here at Ball State. but I've always had such a passion for student learning and student success. I joke that I went to college and never left campus because I truly found my home there. Along the way, I've had stops in residence life and academic affairs, orientation, but always came back to working in advising, whether it was with first-year students, other students that were at risk, or now with upper division advising students. It allows me to have the opportunity to be a part of their entire collegiate experience. It's not just about, here are the classes you need to take, but this is how you become involved in the life of our institution, as well as the life of our community that we're in, helping them to build themselves into the humans that they are going to be someday. And it's an incredibly rewarding opportunity and such an honor to have such a small part of their lives.
Thank you for that. And I think you describe all of us when you say that we probably are here because we didn't want to leave college, right?
True.
But I appreciate your passion for student success, and our students are very fortunate to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Fowler, you received your Doctor of Philosophy from Arizona State University, the sunny state of Arizona. So what led you from there to Ball State?
Well, just the opportunity to teach at a university like this, I feel like it's the perfect size. And the relationship that we have with our students in the social work department, I feel like is pretty unique, at least from my experience coming from larger institutions. We have several hundred students, but we know who they are, we know their names, and they know us. And the feeling there is a good feeling. And it's something that, to me, the research is important, but when I come to a university, I also want to be very involved in the teaching, and I want that's what gives this kind of position value to me.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much. You know, we like to say that we are large enough that our students can actually have diverse experiences, but still small enough to feel intimate and connected. So I certainly appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And Dr. Salome, you've taught in elementary schools in Los Angeles, in Chicago. This allowed you to see all sorts of educational policies in action. Undoubtedly, some worked well, some maybe did not work as well. Why was it important for you to come to Ball State and make an impact on doctoral students who will be guiding and shaping these educational policies in the future, particularly as they pertain to inclusive excellence?
Thank you for that question. So I started my career as a teacher, as you referenced in the question, and it was really clear to me in those initial years that it was so important to create productive environments for my elementary students. And I think if you look broadly, it's not hard to find pockets of success with teachers and students, but it's difficult to find success at scale unless you have an excellent leader in place. And one of the really wonderful things about Ball State, we have about a third of sitting superintendents in this state have our degree. So if you think about that, it's an incredible opportunity to make impact and to help leaders think through issues of equity, all of that's aligned with inclusive excellence. So that was the main draw for me here, is to come and make a contribution.
That's great. And how wonderful that we have that footprint across the state and the opportunity to really diversify, right, as we move forward. So Paige, let me return to you. At Ball State, we're very proud of our College of Communication, Information, and Media. And when it comes to communication specifically, I know you're very passionate about ensuring that members of our community, both at the university and within the media, have those effective communication skills to better engage in conversations about inclusive excellence. How do we go about building those skills so that we're creating the messages in media to illuminate these issues in the right way?
Well, I want to be honest. It's not an easy task and it's not an immediate task, but it's something that we can achieve if we're conscious and intentional about what we do. First is making sure that we have diverse experiences in our classroom, so they represent the diversity of the world, so that students understand that the world isn't one view or one perspective. There is a range of perspectives that can be incorporated. The second is to make sure that our students have the skills to engage in conversation with one another. And that means the ability to articulate their own experiences, to situate those experiences within a social context, but also to listen to the different experiences of others. We face a challenge in our culture that we think that we have to agree with each other to think that we have heard one another. And that's not the case. We can listen, we can understand, and we can disagree, but we need to have the skills to be able to do that respectfully and articulately. The third is we need to have the skills to evaluate the reliability of the messages our media are putting forth. Right? So how do we determine what is a doctored image? How do we have the technology and the knowledge to use it to do fact check? How do we expose ourselves to different messages in the media and then have the critical thinking skills to adjudicate what do I believe and what resonates with what I want to see my world look like? So those three things combined, they're a huge task, but they're a task that our college is well suited for, but also our university is situated well to do. We're a liberal arts education that thinks about what is the impact, what is the effect we can have on our community. So I'm very heartened by that and pleased that we get to be a part of contributing to Ball State University's mission.
Absolutely. You can do that both at the systemic level, but also by empowering our students with the right skills, which is incredible to see. Amanda, as a professional academic advisor, you encounter diverse students day to day, and you interact with them. We've talked about the systemic messaging, but you are with them on a personal level. When you or your staff are working with a first-generation college student, are there any special considerations to keep in mind for that student in order to support their educational goals?
Absolutely, there are special considerations. One of the things that is so important to me as an advisor and as someone who is guiding advisors across our institution is stressing the importance of relationship building and working to make those connections with their students, their first-year students particularly, because this is a population of students that don't always have the language necessary to navigate this institution or any institution and navigate it effectively. I have been so grateful to have amidst my group of advisors a first-generation college student, and she very openly shares her experiences from her young age being in a single-family home to navigating college and her master's degree and ultimately her doctoral experience alone. And those are it's a very powerful story to tell and to be willing to share that with others so that I can understand just a little bit about what that experience might look like for another student. And she is very open about sharing that with our staff, and being vulnerable in those moments with students is so important. It's not always appropriate to share our experiences, but when we make that connection with them, when we understand what is important to them in their experience, we're then able to build that relationship and build that trust that we can then be that navigator for them down the road. When I was at my previous institution in Oklahoma, I had the opportunity to work with our Indigenous students and their families. And it was at that point, very early in my career, that I recognized the importance of family to these students, and that these students weren't coming to college alone. They were bringing their family members with them in one way, shape, or form. And it was so important to also have communication and a partnership with those family members, of course, in a way that protected that student's experience and their academic information. But having that relationship with the family members, which for so many students and first-year generation students too, is part of the lifeblood of who they are. They can't navigate this by themselves. So having that opportunity to learn how to build connections with their students and their families, to educate their families as to what this experience might look like, was really rewarding and really eye-opening for me. I've learned too that with a lot of my first generation college students, that I'm a teacher, not just their navigator, and I'm learning how to connect them to the various offices on campus. I think that, was it last year that we started our first generation program where students could easily identify other faculty and staff who had had similar experiences. And that was incredibly powerful to be able to, and is powerful, to connect students to those individuals who have that shared experience, to give the authenticity to what they're experiencing sometime. But it really comes down to the relationship, building that relationship and making a safe space for them.
That is wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a first generation
Yes.
college student, and I can certainly appreciate the value of that relationship building and that connection. I know as first generation students, we often find ourselves in situations where we're learning the language of the institution, but as we learn the language, we're also moving away from our families and having to translate that.
Right.
So the fact that you are so mindful in how you include families as well in part of that educational journey is really meaningful. So thank you for doing that work. Janelle, I'd like to shift a little bit and turn toward the work of diversity in a different perspective here. You have been serving on the College of Health Diversity Committee, and together you established some very specific goals and action steps. But you had mentioned that the Black Lives Matter movement last year really accelerated a general sense of vulnerability and a willingness to have more meaningful conversations about diversity, and in turn about inclusive excellence. What specifically did you see change over the past year in this regard, and how has that helped focus the efforts of your diversity committee?
So like Amanda said, with faculty and staff being vulnerable with students, we've definitely found that that is something at times necessary, but can be very difficult to do. In my department, we have a level system for students of concern. So students who, not just disciplinary matters, but maybe they've started to turn in assignments late, or they've started to miss a few assignments, or they've just stopped coming to class and no one's really sure why. So we have a system where we will call those students in at some point and ask, hey, what's going on, and see if we can help work with them. And what we've noticed over the years is that the students who are called up for a level of concern for, starting to miss assignments or not coming to class anymore, they're disproportionately some of our students of color. And we felt like this is a failure on our part because we're not sure why this is happening, and we're not sure why these students aren't communicating to us what their needs are and what's going on with them. And then when we finally call them in, talk to them, we may find out that there's all this stuff going on in their life or different things that they hadn't communicated to us. It was really troubling. We weren't really sure what to do about it, and we knew it was a problem, but we're kind of tabling it, didn't really know how to proceed. But I can say when the Black Lives Movement, when it really, this summer, it's been around a long time, of course, but when it really came into light, I think I'm not alone in thinking it was, at this point, my feelings of vulnerability or my feelings of not knowing if I'm doing something correctly or addressing a student correctly, and I'm like, I just have to do it. If I do it wrong, it's okay. I just need to do it. So at the time I was teaching an online class, and there were several students who were turning things in late, and some were students of color. And I reached out and I asked the question, I asked, how are you experiencing, the protest right now? Are you okay? How are you feeling? We want to do better. I want to do better. And the responses I got were just amazing, because I guess sometimes we don't really know if you don't ask the question. And I'd wondered, should I ask this question? Is this too probing? And that sort of uncertainty, I'm learning, wasn't helpful. So I began some dialogue with the students, and they told me some of their experiences and some of their challenges in being at university as a student of color. And one of the things, maybe that didn't come directly from those conversations, but came at the same time, was that we have a Student of Social Work Association in our department. And a group of students came together and created a Black Student of Social Work Association, which anyone of any color or background can join, but the purpose and the goal of the club is to support students of color in the department and across campus as well. And so that organization started, and we are, because of COVID time, there's lots of goals and they haven't necessarily been implemented yet, but there are some really great ideas for communication, and those communication channels are already starting, and the group is meeting online monthly and having some guest speakers already virtually, and it's just really about to take off. And when I think about this, I feel like it all happened around that same time that we were like, okay, we need to do something now, and it doesn't matter how vulnerable we feel or how poorly we do it, we just need to do something. So I think that was a great thing to come out of that.
Wow, that is wonderful. And it takes courage to lean into that vulnerability. So often we hear about students who need to be college ready instead of thinking about our institutions ready for our students, right? And how to serve them. So thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful way to connect with them. And I appreciate that work. Serena, you have also been involved in some activities to advance inclusive excellence initiatives on campus, and you've had a multifaceted role, particularly as the chair of your department's Inclusive Excellence Committee. As a teacher and advisor of doctoral students, the student experience is always top of mind. How have the university Inclusive Excellence initiatives helped you get a better grasp not only on recruiting more diverse students, but also connecting with minority students to better understand their specific experience?
Yeah, thank you for that question. One of the primary programs that's helped me was actually Diversity Associates, which we had the opportunity to work on a project. So it was sort of serendipitous because I had stepped into the advising role as I was part of the Diversity Associates program. So I decided for my particular project to really examine our student pipeline. So getting a better handle on who is in our program, how are we doing with them, who graduates, what do those numbers look like, and who are the folks that are finishing up. And that was really helpful, but it was also quite incomplete. So the next phase of the work has really been more qualitative in nature, and working with students to interview them to hear more of their personal history and then also their experience at Ball State. So for example, I had a student that shared that she had previously not attended a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and it was one of her life goals to obtain a doctoral degree from such a place. And it was something that never actually occurred to me as something that would be an important marker. And I think through these interviews, I've gotten different insights. So kind of to speak to Amanda's point, I think relationship building is the utmost, and trying to think about program evaluation as a mechanism to continue to build those relationships, but also feed information back into the program so we can continuously improve.
Yeah, that's great. And at the graduate level, that building relationships becomes even more critical, I would think, just because you're working so closely with people at that level. So
absolutely. I think the other thing that's been interesting with the recruitment retention piece is really thinking, again, with institutional excellence at the core, is thinking about what are those barriers to things like admission. So one of the things that we've done recently is rethink our what's required for admission. So we have moved away from traditional metrics like the GRE and moved more into thinking about letters of recommendation and potential for leadership and the like. So I think that's been really helpful in terms of diversifying our candidates and making sure we have representation from folks that are working all across the state.
That's great. That is really good to hear. Janelle, I want to come back to you, continuing on this theme of our work around diversity. Dr. Kathy Ober is a nationally recognized expert when it comes to helping organizations create more inclusive environments. I know you and your department have found great value in her work. How are you hoping to incorporate her system to give the faculty in your department the skill sets that they need to have difficult conversations about race and inclusivity in their classroom?
Mm-hmm. So we had some focus groups with our students in the past year, and we wanted to ask them, how they felt in our department as far as inclusion and diversity. And one of the things that really stuck out to us was that students said, we want more opportunity to practice having difficult conversations in the classroom, because they're going to have, they recognize they're going to have to go out in the world and have difficult conversations. And in social work, for sure, you're going to have difficult conversations. And I think in social work, we become comfortable with certain topics that maybe other people aren't as comfortable with, like domestic violence or child abuse and things like that. But the things like, religion, politics, race, ethnicity, all of those sort of things, we have to make sure that we're really comfortable with all of that. So what we decided as a faculty was that we wanted to have groups where we would get together and look at some of Kathy Ober's work and also practice to look at this. She has it's a pair system for effective dialogue, and it has a bunch of steps and different prompts and things like that. And we wanted to look at, so this is what we're doing now. We're meeting every other week as a faculty, and it's not mandatory, it's optional, but so far it's really good attendance. And we're bringing case studies to the table. So things that, okay, say you're in a classroom, this happens, or you're in a faculty meeting and this happens, or whatever. And what are some of the ways that you might apply the system for effective dialogue and interrupt some of the non-constructive things going on. So we've gotten together and been working on that with the idea that we can also share this information with our students, and more importantly, also model it with our students, so that, if we don't feel comfortable having these most difficult conversations in the classroom, why would students feel comfortable doing it? So we said it starts here. We're going to do that, and we're going to model that, and we want to practice it so that it's not just something that we know, intellectually, but something that we actually get in the practice of doing. And I think that's important. We talk about the challenges of if you planned, your class for that day and you have all this material you want to cover and you're like, I got it, I got my PowerPoint or whatever I'm going to be using, my activity. And then when we get to class, if students end up, getting into a heated conversation about something, sometimes it's hard as an instructor to sort of let that go and just go with where the classroom's taking you. But that's also a lesson too. And that's what the students were telling us. We want this real world practice and having these conversations with each other. So
I like that. And I like the practical application, right? It goes back to what you were saying about building those skills and having people be comfortable using those skills as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
The one thing is we hear over and over again, I don't know how to ask the question. And if we can't ask the question or respond, then we can't learn about each other. Similarly to what Janelle's talking about is we have started intergroup dialogue sessions and trainings that are not just for one college, they're for the university, they're for our operational units, they're for our community partners. So we have people from the Muncie Community Schools who are part of this. Our goal is that everybody has the ability to articulate their own identities, their own concerns, the ability to listen to others, to come together in those difficult conversations. Because if we know how to do that, then we don't stop talking to each other because I'm afraid I'm going to ask the wrong question, or I'm afraid I'm going to say something and nobody's going to listen to me. We are excited because we hope to see that reverberate throughout not just one college, not just Ball State University, not just Muncie or Indiana, but as our students and our faculty and our staff go out to the rest of the world, that we become a model of how to do that. And it's exciting to hear that that's happening everywhere else and that people want to do and have those conversations. And I appreciate so often as I've been in this classroom, my plans seem to go out the window, right?
Yes.
But I truly believe that those days are probably the days that the best learning happens, not just for the students, but for me or a professor.
I like that. And I'm going to ask you to elaborate on some of the actions that you're taking in your position.
Yes.
I know that you like to say that diversity is your first thought and inclusion is your second thought and first action. So can you share with us a little bit about what is the origin of that phrase for you and how have you seen it applied in your role as dean?
I am not sure what the origin is. I think it actually came in a very thoughtful moment as I was applying for a job, particularly Ball State University, and asked to reflect on that. And when I think about diversity, it's often, do we have something or someone of difference, right? And when I think about inclusion, it's more how are we valuing that difference? And a personal experience for me was when I was pregnant, right? We wanted to recruit women into higher education. That's diversity, more women. But when I would try and sit in a classroom desk, my body, my pregnant body did not fit in that desk. That is a lack of inclusion at that moment, right? And so I want us to not just think about, do we have differences, but what are the actions we're doing to value those differences, to see what it is that happens and what we bring. So for example, intergroup dialogue, saying that we value your different perspective and opinion, and we're going to make sure that there is a space for you to be able to communicate that information. Also through our Inclusive Excellence Toolbox that we're putting into our classrooms that give a specific example of different voices that are specific to our discipline and communication. So when a student looks at a syllabus, they see work and ideas from people who look like them. What we don't want, and this was something I learned from someone in English, is we don't want diversity where we take someone who is different and put them in a pull-out box, like a little box, and frame them. We want inclusion. We want their stories, their ideas and insights woven throughout the text of the textbook. They are now included at that point.
I like that distinction. Thank you very much. And Amanda, we're going to wrap this round up with you. I know you also work with Ball State's international students. What specifically have you taken away from those interactions as it pertains to the ideals of inclusive excellence?
Absolutely. You know, when we work with our international students, there's just so much to learn from them, right? We have these beautiful opportunities to learn about another culture as we are teaching them about ours and teaching them how to be connected. In the College of Communication, Information, and Media, we have this lovely program where we partner with universities in China to bring in complete cohorts of students that are pursuing our journalism and telecommunications news programs. And what we found is that these students have a wonderful experience, but tend to move through the program as a cohort. They're taking, even when they may start at a little bit of different times, they're taking the same classes. They're having the same experiences. They are staying within their comfortable social network. And I've been exceptionally proud of the work that the advisors in that area and then the faculty members of those areas work so diligently to connect those students to different opportunities so that they can be learning more about how we do things here because they already come with such a great skill set from their previous education. But what I've most appreciated is that many of our faculty members are looking for ways to also teach our domestic students to take these different opportunities to learn from our partners in these institutions. And that has been something that's been really special to see, that they're very proactive there. When I'm working with international students, I've found that I have to change my approach sometimes. They will often come in as pairs or maybe a group of 3 so that they are comfortable. But also I've learned after asking those questions over years, right? Well, why are you doing this? I'm a nice person. I'm not scary. It's also respect. They want to make sure that they're absorbing that information that I'm giving them, that they're not forgetting anything. There's also that safety piece that is there. So it was a little disconcerting the first time it happened because I thought, oh my gosh, there's multiple people here. What if I mess up, right? But it really turns into these lovely opportunities that these students are more comfortable in this setting, and therefore it allows us to have deeper conversations about their experiences. How then again, I've used the word connection many times now. How can I connect them to this institution? How can I connect others to them, which is something that's so incredibly important for all of our experiences, truly.
Absolutely, and I love thinking about diversity as not just being domestic, but kind of the sense of global diversity and how we can connect the local to the global and be able to bridge those differences as well. So I want to move on to our final set of questions, and I'm going to start with you, Serena. 2020 was just a hard year all around, and I know there are many people that would love to skip it, but whether it was the global pandemic, moments of great civil unrest, a contentious and divisive presidential and political climate, and everything else in between. But you think that this moment in time actually is an opportunity for us to surge forward, particularly when it comes to inclusive excellence. Why do you think that?
I think that there's just great opportunity in this moment. There's no doubt that this has been a challenging year for us all. But I think with that challenge comes great resilience. I've noticed with our students, they are, I think folks are very open to learn, open to engage and try to change the status quo. I think for those of us in education and those who are focused on issues of equity more generally, none of this is new. But the pandemic has really shown a spotlight on inequities. Like, so for example, in a school setting, I don't know that people think about how schools are hubs and communities, how they provide food. And I think a lot of that has been uncovered in the midst of what's gone on in 2020. Bringing this to more of a local level, my faculty has been incredibly receptive. I don't think that we are in a position to ignore what's going on. I mean, we have to act. So whereas in the last few years we've done a lot in terms of professional development and book study and so on, we're really working hard on action and how to think about being social advocates ourselves and how to instill that in our students. And again, as you know, and taking one step closer, I teach a doctoral seminar on quantitative methods. And this semester, we're working with a high school longitudinal data set. So there's a lot of ways that you can see what's going on nationally with achievement and so on. And usually I dive right in because there's so much content and there's so much to glean. But this year, given what's gone on, I've really taken a pause. And we are spending a lot of time thinking about data science and problematizing it, thinking about, these data are collected, for what purpose, by whom, how will they be used, what is the context that surrounds them. And I think that people too often think that data, particularly quantitative data, is neutral, when that couldn't be further from the truth. So I think for various reasons, we're in a wonderful position to act.
Yeah, I like that, and I appreciate you reminding us. I mean, you've all talked a little bit about how faculty are so committed to this work, and they're really looking at how to problem solve and how to connect with students and build those relationships, which are so important. So related to that faculty learning aspect, Janelle, I know you're a big proponent of the faculty leading by example, whether it's in this work with Inclusive Excellence or something like the Addictions Coalition of Delaware County, which is another major professional endeavor for you. Why is it so important for you, for the faculty, to set the tone with these endeavors?
Mm-hmm. So the Addictions Coalition of Delaware County, the acronym is ACDC. It's pretty easy to remember. We began a little over a year ago, and somehow through COVID are still keeping the momentum and going. And that is a coalition between the university and the community. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't operating in silos from what the community was doing to fight addictions and what we were doing here at the university. So we developed this coalition, and when I say we, it's two colleagues of mine, Jean Marie Place from Nutrition and Health Science, and also Dane Minnick from my Department of Social Work. And what we found is when we started to try to organize people and provide a place for people to, and a structure for people to come together from the community and the university and talk to one another, was that there's so many resources in this small community of Muncie, but there's so many resources and so many people doing amazing things, and we just needed a structure. We just needed something So we put that together as a coalition. We've had several quarterly meetings. We're about to have our second annual Substance Use Disorder Symposium of Delaware County next month. And we are meeting so many people and getting so many projects done. Under the coalition, there's member-led groups, member-led projects. So any member of the coalition, at this point it's 200 or more, can start their own member-led group based on a passion that they have or a need that they see in the community with their own clients. Or it doesn't, you don't have to be someone in the social service provider to be in the coalition. It could be anyone. It could just be someone who lives in the community and is concerned. And we do have that. So we've started several groups and been able to really organize and get some of these projects off of the ground. One of the groups is called the Recovery Cafe, and it's a national program. And we're bringing Recovery Cafe to Muncie. And it's a wonderful program based on the belief that connection is healing, the healing power of connection. And these are recovery support services for people who are done with formal services or maybe have graduated from a program where they're receiving formal addiction services, but they may need some support after they graduate. And so the recovery support services is where the community comes in and fills in the gaps, and it's a peer-run program. And also I want to say too, it's not just for people in recovery from substance use addiction. We at the Recovery Cafe has this philosophy of everyone's in recovery from something, whether it's trauma, codependency, homelessness, mental health issues, a bad year, whatever it is.
Yes.
We know what it's like to be sometimes in a condition where you're not being your best or you're not thriving. And so the idea is that this group would provide that service of those recovery support services. And that's just one of the groups under the ACDC. And, as faculty, we don't want to just stay in the classroom. We want to get out. We want to show students how to make the connections and how to have those conversations and get people working together. The more, the better. So that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, what a powerful partnership and service to the community. And I can't imagine in our virtual world that we don't need that connection is healing, right?
Yeah.
More so than ever before.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Paige, I want to end our conversation today with a final question for you. CCIM has a student, Eric Fulton Jr., who is a first-generation college student. He has 4 younger siblings, and growing up, he said he didn't know anyone with a college degree. He says he feels there is a tremendous need for Black people in education, teachers, administrators, and policymakers, and that he wants to graduate from Ball State and help fill that need within his community. What have you learned from students like Eric who are able to come to this university and not only shine a light on these issues, but want to be part of a solution?
Wow. Eric is an amazing young man, and he will do everything that he says he wants to do. But he's going to do it because somebody took the time to look at him and say, I see you. I see your potential. And I will listen to what you're telling me you need to be able to realize that potential. For a very long time, we've looked at our communities and said, we will tell you what you need, and we will tell you where you can go. Eric has taught me that we have to listen to people telling us what they need and where they want to go. And then we need to come alongside them and believe them and help them achieve that vision. Eric is going to do that, and I have no doubt. He serves on my collegiate. I am so fortunate to have him there because he is a voice of inspiration. He is a voice that questions me and makes me question myself. At one time he said to me, I was telling him about some work we were doing in the college, and he said to me, you have the best job. And I said, absolutely, but it's because of the choices I make and how I want to do this job. I look forward to the choices he will make in his life because he's going to teach me how to do my job better.
Wow. Thank you so much for that thoughtful and moving response. And thanks to all of you for participating in this panel and for joining me here today. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for joining us. Be sure to keep an eye out for this roundtable and other endeavors related to inclusive excellence at Ball State amongst the university's multiple channels, including the website, social media, and email. I hope you return for our next roundtable as we continue our conversation about this important enduring value at our university.